Okay, Syl Carle, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.
For people who may not know, because it's your first election running in a part of Guelph, but for people who may not know, this is actually your third election, federally speaking, because I do know you ran for a local election a couple of years ago. But in terms of federal politics, it's your third time running, third time as a People's Party candidate. Um, what keeps you coming back for more, both as in terms of running for federal office, but also running as the local People's Party candidate?
I just can't take no for an answer. Um, the the reason why I run for the People's Party and not any other party out there, and in I won't hide the fact that other parties have courted me. Um, the People's Party has at its core four pillar principles that are very dear to my heart, and those are personal responsibility, respect, fairness, and above all, freedom. If we don't have freedom, we don't have any of those pillars
Hmm.
in Canada or in any Western democracy.
Well, let me just walk you through th those four pillars in terms of like what they mean to you, because um, it's I think we all could have different ideas, but in terms of when you're talking about personal responsibility, what are you talking about?
Taking responsibility for yourself, for your life. Um, not not blaming others for your own faith. Um, acting like you have control over your life,
Hmm.
not over others. Um, owning your own bills,
Hmm. Hmm.
not looking for a handout, um, always taking care of your own affairs, not looking for the government or the state to to look after things that you are solely responsible for, really, and you are best to look after yourself.
Hmm. And when we're talking about respect and fairness, I've kind of bundled those two together. I think they're connected. Maybe you have a different opinion, but when we're talking about respect and fairness, to who and about what?
Respect is for our institutions and for our fellow Canadians. We um, with freedom come freedom of expression,
Hmm.
what is commonly referred to as freedom of speech. It's, we have freedom of expression in Canada.
Hmm.
Your freedom of expression uh, starts where mine ends, and vice versa. That is part of the respect, uh, one of the pillars of our four pillars.
Hmm. Okay. And so all of this adds up to freedom. And I guess what does freedom look like to you?
Freedom.
Mm,
Well, it's the freedom of expression, freedom of um, you can gather uh, where where you want. You can go where you want without any restrictions. It freedom comes in many forms. Freedom of speech being probably the pivotal one in all of them. And when we have a national uh, committee like the National Debate Committee
mm,
restricting freedom of speech, freedom of expression from party leaders, it's like it goes against the core principles of our charter.
mm,
We have five main parties in Canada that are represented across the country, and those five parties should be represented. Uh, Quebec so happens to have a local party that I believe should be given an exception and have its leader represented as well.
hmm. You're, I think, expressly referring to how Mr. Bernier was not included in the recent leaders' debates.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. I can make that argument as well, but to keep things local, you are running against Michael Chong, who is pretty well regarded. I think just talking to people, I think a lot of people who, even if they're not conservative or conservative voters, have an admiration or an appreciation for Mr. Chong. But as someone who's now run against him three times, you must sense a particular vulnerability. There's something
Oh,
that Mr.
absolutely.
Chong, yeah, something that Mr. Chong isn't doing that you would like to do better.
Absolutely. I have respect for Michael. Um, I had a conversation with a fellow candidate last night and said it's so difficult. I had a debate last night and said to my friend, I said it's very difficult to debate a good human, whom Michael is. He's a good guy. It's difficult to debate someone like that when deep down he means well. His policies are not to for the best of the writing. He's not a conservative, but that doesn't make him a bad person.
He's not conservative in what way?
Oh, in many ways. If you take the time to look at his voting record, he votes with liberals far more often than the rest of the caucus. And one, the highlight of his voting record is on Bill C4, um, conversion therapy bill, where he voted on two readings in favor of that bill, which is something that not very many conservatives in the riding support.
I see. I would imagine though, if you talk to Mr. Chong, he would probably make the case that he's got to vote his conscience, that you're never going to agree with 100% of the people 100% of the time. Um, I guess why throw out somebody who has, gets you there 70% of the time in favor of somebody who maybe gets you there
Mhm.
80 or 90% of the time?
I guess it could be.
Conservative policy wise speaking.
I, I guess it could be argued that that's the difference between a politician and a statesman.
Okay.
Um, Michael, Michael is representing the writing. He's not representing Michael Chong.
Hmm. Hmm. I'm curious, because I know from your background, you you were an RCMP officer, correct?
Correct. Yes.
And then when you retired, you got into business. You moved to Georgetown, and I have been a businessman in Georgetown for I want to say 20 plus years.
Um, yes.
Not that I'm trying to age you out or anything, but the part I'm curious about is that Georgetown was separated out the last the when the ridings were redrawn in 2023. It's now part of a new riding called Milton East, Halton Hills South, which is a mouthful. Not that Wellington-Halton Hills North is any less of a mouthful, but I'm curious why you stuck with the greater Wellington-Halton Hills instead of following Georgetown, which could be characterized as your home base.
I have a greater attachment to Wellington and Halton Hills North. I've lived in Arthur. I've lived in Erin.
Hmm.
I have been in Georgetown since 1998,
Mm-hmm.
but I've lived across the riding, and I chose to stick with the old riding.
Okay. I appreciate that. I want to talk a bit about PPC policy. Well, I want to talk first about the PPC itself because it's still a new party. It's still making a name for itself. It hasn't won a seat in Parliament, so and I know that makes it sort of difficult to get some attention. So, when you're talking to voters, perhaps even new voters new to your riding in South Guelph, what is your pitch about the People's Party? What makes the People's Party different from the other major parties?
Well, we on that note, Adam, I'll point out that the Green Party took 30 years to get a seat.
Very true.
And I don't remember if they were included in the national debate at the time without a seat. I'll
Nope.
have to I'd have to look into that.
And
Um,
Scotty, my co-host, and I were actually having a conversation about this yesterday. We were trying to remember when it was Elizabeth May finally got to the debates. We think it was 2011, which was the same election she won her seat. So it took at least 20 years to get the Greens to the national debate.
okay. Uh, well, the way I approach it with um, canvassing, we talk about the four pillars.
Mm,
We talk about our principled approach to politics. I invite you to and your viewers to look at our policy platform at peoplespartyofcanada.ca. And out of the 21 policies that are currently there, 16 were present in 2019.
mm,
So we don't blow with the wind. We don't necessarily do what's popular. We Our principled approach calls for, yeah, repeating the same policy because what we believed in 5 years, 6, 7 years ago still applies today.
hmm. Would you mind talking about what's changed then? You said 16 out of 21, which still leaves five changed policies. Do you know what's
Yes.
changed?
The biggest one, and you know what, I will address it because it's something that's um, not readily discussed in Canadian politics because it's so controversial.
Mm,
One policy is abortion.
mm-hmm,
Canada is one of three countries in the world without any restrictions on abortion. You can look it up. We share the world stage with, of all countries in the world to do that, North Korea and China. Both those despot of countries don't have any restrictions for abortion. They have also no regard to human rights. So I mean, it's not very surprising. What is surprising is that Canada does not have any restrictions on abortion. And what we are proposing is to finally debate a law in the House of Commons. That debate hasn't taken place since 1988.
mm-hmm,
And that Supreme Court decision, that was the Morgentaler decision,
mm-hmm.
didn't say Canada cannot have a law on abortion. We just can't have that law. So we have
Right.
to debate the law that is constitutional. And if it's called for, personally, this is not party policy, at least not yet. Personally, I would support a national referendum on the question.
Okay. About whether or not abortion should be illegal or what would the question be?
Um, our party policy at the moment is
Hmm.
the third trimester.
Okay, so no abortion in the third trimester.
Correct. So the first two, which amounts to what, 28 weeks,
Hmm. Right.
it's still very, very, very liberal.
Sure.
And what I find at the door, at least in the writing, and I think it's pretty much common, where the vast majority of Canadians are in favor of some form of restriction.
Mm. Hmm. Do you ever encounter misconceptions about your party? Do you ever, people may misunderstand something about the People's Party or perhaps Mr. Bernier and some of the things he said, and how do you respond to those?
Yes, I often find that, first of all, they don't know who we are.
Hmm.
Mass media, mainstream media has done it a good job at keeping us a secret. When people find out what our policies are and how it would impact them, uh, something like um, reducing taxes, balancing the budgets, those are things that make life affordable. If you balance your budget at home, all of
Hmm.
a sudden you're not paying all this cash out to the credit card companies. Now you have some money to go out and actually enjoy yourself. Well, this is what we want to do. We'll take it up a notch to the, at managing a country. We
Mm,
have to stop living off our credit cards. Um, Social programs are in dire danger now of seeing substantial cuts in them. Because why? Because we have a deficit. We keep spending more money than 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 we bring in, and we actually do this to ourselves.
mm,
We have we have a tariff war going on now, and we would be in such a much better financial place if we could actually sell our resources, such as oil and natural gas,
mm,
to other markets.
right.
But we have crippled ourselves to such an extent with, I call it climate anxiety.
Mm,
Projects have been canceled left and right. We don't take the right approach on global emissions. We're solely focused on emissions in Canada, whereas let's talk about global emissions. If we open up pipelines, gas pipelines in Canada, and we start exporting our natural gas, we are indeed reducing emissions throughout the world.
mm,
If China had access to that natural gas, it's far simpler to deal with natural gas than it is to deal with coal.
okay. I would note because I was reading a Q&A you did. I think it was with one of the village media outlets, but and I think this speaks to some of the misconceptions about the party. Um, you are not denying that there is such a thing as global climate change. You have a different approach.
Um, the climate is changing.
Hmm.
It's like it will always be changing. It has been changing since the beginning of time.
Hmm.
Um, what we question is the impact that we have
Okay.
on the climate. And you know, if indeed the climate was killing us, I don't think Canada would have added 2.5 million citizens uh, to Canada, uh, in bringing people from around the world and from warmer climates where they're going to burn 10 times the amount of fossil fuel just to survive is illogical.
Hmm.
So this is where we're like, something's not adding up here.
Hmm.
If we are increasing the populations of the northern hemisphere, and we say that we are in a full-fledged climate crisis,
Hmm.
um, we're doing something wrong.
But we at least agree that, pumping out tons and tons of smoke from coal burning is bad.
Well, yes, it's we haven't burned coal in Canada for electricity. Okay, in Ontario, there are coal plants in Alberta, I believe.
Mm,
Um, we know that there are better ways of generating energy. Yes.
okay, perfect. Um, I want to talk a bit about Mr. Bernier, because as we've been saying, there's three elections. Party leaders don't last forever. I don't know what Mr. Bernier's plans are. I don't have any insight into what goes on in his head, but it's not impossible to think that there could be a day he'll want to move on to something else, whatever that might be. Perhaps he'll build a boat. I don't know. But in terms of what, as someone who has been with him for 6, 7 years now, what is the future for the People's Party, do you think, with or without Mr. Bernier?
The future for the party is bright, with or without Maxime. Um, Maxime has done a great job. He keeps doing a great job. When Maxime decides it's enough, um, there are uh, many candidates that would take the helm, including myself. I will run as leader, most definitely.
Oh,
I
wow.
believe, I
Thank you.
believe that
Thank you for the
strongly.
scoop.
Yeah, I believe that strongly uh, in our in our policy platform. This is like my personal intentions are no
Fair enough.
signal to the leader. I have the leader has my full support.
I'm just curious, as we're talking, people can't see it on the radio, but you have shaved your mustache, and which may be seen as like a flex of like somebody who's like, I gotta clean myself up if I want to be leader one day. Um, but I digress. I always ask this of every candidate that comes on, or at least I try. Is there a particular issue that is personally important to you that you want to make sure that you talk to constituents about before the election is over? Like, is there something like you don't want to be kicking yourself on April 29th saying, I wish I talked about this more?
Well, the elephant in the room in the writing is always about vote splitting.
Mm,
Um, and that argument is the premise of that argument is false. We are taking from all parties.
mm,
We actually give the habitual non-voters a home. There are
mm.
many Canadians out there who hadn't voted in a long time until we came onto the scene, and in 2021 during the campaign of 2021 we had an event in Guelph, as a matter of fact,
Mm-hmm.
where I asked the crowd um, who they had voted for in the previous elections. And it's from the Guelph Political. The article is still available online, and you can look it up.
That's my site, by the way. I was there.
Yeah, so you can look it up. We take voters from the Conservatives, we take voters from the Liberals, the NDP, and the Greens. The last election, I had a lot of support from the Greens. I
Hmm.
finished ahead of the Greens. Um, and at last night's debate, to my surprise, I've had more Liberals
Hmm.
coming to me and say, Syl, we agree with a lot of what you're saying.
Hmm.
This is typical of a conservative voter. Typically, a conservative will come to me and say, in 2019, at a private function, I had a well-informed, politically savvy person come to me and say, "Thank you for saying out loud what
Hmm.
we are no longer allowed to say."
Hmm.
That alone is fuel for me to carry on doing what it is that I'm doing. You know, I'm I am looking forward to serving fellow Canadians once more
Hmm.
in the House of Commons,
Hmm.
but I don't want to serve them on a false premise. If I am going to serve my fellow Canadians, it will be with a mandate.
Hmm.
I'm not I'm not going to tell you the sky is blue when it's raining. Uh, no, I'm not a politician. I will tell it exactly how it is. And if you like that approach, you support me. If you don't, there's other parties that will tell you whatever you want to hear.
Hmm. It does make me wonder, and maybe you can talk a bit about this. You could win. It's not outside the realm of impossibility. Um, it is probably unlikely. I'm not a prophet, but that the PPC would form a government. But in a circumstance where you do end up as the MP for Wellington-Halton Hills North, what kind of MP do you want to be? Like, what would your time in office look like in terms of how you want to conduct yourself?
Definitely a consensus builder.
Mm,
Um, it's Although I would be the voice of the people, it's it's not my policies that will be implemented. I will be consulting with the electorate, not just my members. I will be an MP for the riding, not just for who voted for me.
hmm. Well, just to also talk about what you were just saying just now about how when people approach you and how the PPC has sort of become a home for people who I guess have been turned off from other political parties. Um, that's a lot of responsibility, and I think I sense that from our Guelph candidate Jeffrey Swackhammer, that he's someone else who was turned off by party politics in other quarters and found a home for himself in the PPC. I guess what I would like to know is that's a lot of pressure for you to take on when people say like I was about to give up and then I heard you and I thought this is someplace I might belong. And how do you I guess how do you navigate that responsibility?
I don't look at it as pressure.
Mm,
It's fuel for my fire.
mm,
If I'm going to give you that voice, uh, this is all the thank you I need.
hmm. All right. Well, I appreciate that, Syl. I appreciate your time. And if people are interested in learning more about you or the party platform or anything that's coming up in the last few days of the election, where can people find you on the internet?
At People's Party of Canada.ca.
Okay, perfect. Well, Syl, once again, thank you for your time today, and good luck with these last few days of the campaign. And we will see what happens on Monday.
Great, thank you for having me.